Welcome to the Project Core Professional Development modules. This module, Aided Language Input, describes how adults in the classroom can demonstrate the use of augmentative and alternative communication symbols to help beginning communicators learn to use symbols to communicate. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Allied Health Sciences Department at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Teaching students how to use symbols to communicate starts with all students having access to their own personal communication system. Students may not be using these communication systems yet, but they need to have a system that they know is their very own. Adults in the classroom can access these student communication systems to demonstrate use. This teaching strategy of using an augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC system, to show students how to communicate with symbols is called Aided Language Input. Adults can also create their own communication systems that are the same or very similar to students' personal communication systems. This allows them to always have an AAC system handy to show students the power of using symbols for communication. Some adults carry their own around with them and or tape them down in different areas of the classroom or around the school. Some adults choose to use poster-sized communication displays that allow them to demonstrate use of symbols during group lessons. When designing or choosing a format for a classroom-sized communication display, you want it to be as consistent as possible with your students' personal communication systems. As you are demonstrating use of symbols during group lessons, you want your students to have access to the same symbols and ideally in the same locations as they appear on their personal systems to maximize learning opportunities. For beginning communicators, aided language input involves adults using symbols during meaningful interactions. As students see adults using symbols during interactions that are motivating and interesting to them, they start to learn the meaning of symbols and how to use the symbols to communicate with others. Adults do not have to limit the words they use to the words that appear on the communication display. They can say anything they want, but should try to think about the students when choosing symbols they do use. Demonstrate symbols and symbol combinations that show students the power of the words they have available to them. Consider what they could say and what they would likely want to say. Let's consider an example. There is a school dance coming up. As soon as the teacher mentioned it, this girl moved her arm and vocalized, making lots of noise. The teacher saw and heard the girl. As she walked over, the teacher said, "I hear you. I see you're waving your arms." Then she sat down, pointed to go, and said, "Are you ready to go to the dance?" The teacher then stopped talking but held the point on go until the student looked. With her other hand, the teacher grabbed a stack of photos from last year's dance. They looked at the photos together as the teacher said things like, "She is a good dancer," while holding her point on the word good and pausing to give the student time to look and respond by pointing to a symbol, moving, or vocalizing. When the student did nothing, the teacher kept going. She found a picture of fancy dresses and said, "I will not wear a fancy dress." Once again, the teacher held her point on not. After a few seconds, the student vocalized and made a face. The teacher interpreted this to mean that the student did not want a fancy dress either. The adult pointed to not again and said, "I hear you. You will not wear a fancy dress either." The adult also added the comment, "We are the same," while holding her point on the word same. The student then reached over and took the picture of a girl dressed in a ball gown. The adult said, "Oh, maybe you do want a fancy dress," as she pointed to want. Here's another example. It was field day at school. This student walked over to the bleachers. An adult followed him. She used her communication board and said, "Do you want a break?" She held her finger on want until he looked at the board. Then she asked, "Are you finished with field day?" Again, she held her finger on finished and waited. The boy looked out at his classmates, sighed, and smiled. The adult pointed to want and said, "You want to watch?" After a brief pause, she added, "You can just look," and pointed to look. When you get started with aided language input, point to one, maybe two symbols that match what you are saying. The idea is to demonstrate how the symbols work, but do not require students to use the symbols you use. You are not modeling what you want them to say, you are showing them what is possible. When providing aided language input, keep in mind that students have to see you point. If they can't see, they have to feel the symbols you are using or hear the word as you scan to it on their AAC system. Help each other remember that it is only a point if the student sees you doing it. Typically, developing children hear people say thousands and thousands of words before we expect them to say even a single word. Students who are learning to communicate with symbols need the same opportunities to learn. We must let them see us use symbols for real purposes, thousands and thousands of times before we can expect them to use them. Aided language input is a way for us to begin providing the thousands of examples that students need.